Thank you so much for being here. For decades, economists in Pakistan have used very specific terms to refer to the tariff regime, the manner in which we conduct our imports and exports, the trade regimen. A few years ago, the World Bank put out a report called the Country Economic Memorandum, and the report's title was Swimming in Sand. And I think that's very indicative of some of the conversations we will have today, in that despite your talent, your hard work, your ambition, your energy that you might deploy, there are certain frictions within the system, which could be in the form of tariffs, regulations, the red tape, that could keep you and hold you back from getting things done that you want to get done. But today we are here to talk about shifting that sand. What I'm very glad about today is that Tabadlab for a long time has worked with the World Bank. They put out this report called the Pakistan Development Update every 6 months or so. And we watched several of these reports. We very carefully browsed those reports. The one that came out in October 2025, for the first time in a long time, I was very happy with that report, because one of the key messages in that report was that Pakistan should stay its course. And that, for me, kind of stood out as one of the messages, in that perhaps we are finally at this crossroads where we're beginning to see some real change emerge. But how do we ensure that we don't slip back to the same old patterns? How do we ensure that this change that has been brought about is permanent and long-term? Some of that we will unpack today. That report on data within it also confirms a $60 billion export opportunity that's standing right in front of us. And we're going to explore that part of it as well. This isn't just about policy papers, it's about, we have this massive human resource in Pakistan that is hungry for deployment. And it's about moving from a protectionist mindset to a more competitive one. Before we begin, just a couple of quick housekeeping things. The first is, please, if you could kindly turn off your mobile phones, if you need to be on your phone. You can take a call, please step outside the hallway. Outside the hallway is also where the high tea will be served later on. We also encourage you to tweet and post using the hashtag trade, tariffs, and beyond. On your tables, you will also find QR codes. At one point during the proceedings of today, I will ask you to scan that code, and we will conduct a quick poll that we can reflect upon collectively. And then once we launch to the panel, the same QR code will take you to a page where you can ask questions. And you have the liberty of sharing your name, organization, directing the question to one of the panelists very specifically if you'd like to, and so on. So let's begin. First and foremost, our keynote speaker today is Mr. Adnan Pasha Siddiqui, who is the senior advisor to the Minister for Finance, Mr. Bureaucracy. Mr. Adnan was called by the minister at the very last minute, but he was kind enough to come to us in Islamabad and record a statement, because we really wanted to be here today and speak to you all. And without further ado, I'd like to give Mr. Adnan the opportunity to make his keynote address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, captains of industry, partners in Pakistan's future, my profound apologies for not being with you in Karachi today in person. But my work demanded last-minute change in itinerary, so unfortunately I couldn't make it today. Fortunately for me, Tabadlab offered an alternate, so I'm speaking to you via this recorded message. We often sit in halls like this, talk about potential, we talk about Pakistan's strategic location, we talk about our resilient people. I'm here to tell you that potential is a dangerous word. Potential is about comfort. Potential means we could do it. The reality is, we must do it. Let me be blunt. I'm going to speak in my personal capacity here. The era of relying on potential is over, and the era of performance has begun. 18%. 18% is the contribution of our industrial sector to the GDP, and that's you representing that, and thank you for that. In a region where our neighbors are building semiconductors and electric vehicles, we're still celebrating when we sell a little more cotton yarn. And this is not to demean anyone, but the reality is this is where Pakistan is. Acknowledgement is the first step towards change, towards transformation, which is what we'll be talking about today. For 70 years, the government of Pakistan told you where to sell and what to sell by swaying tariffs. We protected inefficient industries like many other countries in the region as well. But we told you that import substitution was patriotism. Protectionism is not patriotism in the 21st century. It is a tax on our exporters. It is a tax on you and me. The balance of payment crisis is not a glitch in the system. It is the system. And the only way to break it is to fundamentally change what we sell and who we sell it to. So today, I'm not here to make promises. I'm here to announce a fundamental shift in the software and the hardware of Pakistan's trade economy. Our goal is no longer just stability. It's about transformation. I'm going to share with you a roadmap for the next 5 years, 2025 to 2030, which could help us collectively shape the export transformation agenda. First, let's address the elephant in the room, tariffs. You've asked for consistency and the government is delivering it now. Under the national tariff policy that's just been formulated, we've set a hard target. The simple average tariff will be reduced to 9.7% by 2030. I think most of you have read that and deliberated on that, and quite vociferously come back to us with your thoughts and feedback. And again, when you look at the maximum cap, it's about 15% that we're looking at. So let me explain what this means to your balance sheets. No more mini budgets. We've stripped the FBR of the past to impose the regulatory duty overnight. And trade policy will be formulated by the Ministry of Commerce, with full support from the Ministry of Finance, the FBR, Ministry of Industries, with a whole of government approach, which works. And that's needed because it has to be coordinated well, so it should suit our business community so that we can galvanize the momentum to export smartly. The second is the raw materials, which are sacred. We are eliminating this anti-export bias. If you import raw material, including selected intermediary goods, to produce and add value in Pakistan for exports of finished goods, this government will help you by designing incentives to achieve our common objectives for long-term sustainability. Look at it from a 5-year sunset clause perspective. To my friends in the protected industries, I say this with respect, as you have always contributed by creating jobs for us Pakistanis, paid taxes, you've been very good citizens of this great nation. Message is rationalize, modernize, or compete. Needless to say, the Honorable Prime Minister has adjusted. He's actually abolished the export development surcharge to support the export competitiveness in the international markets. And other initiatives are being aligned with our larger mission of transforming the economy. Tariffs, again, that's the software, but software crashes if the hardware is broken. So what's the hardware, you ask, right? So for me, hardware, you told us about the energy costs that are killing your competitiveness. We've listened to that. And the government is moving, and lots of announcements have been made, so I'm just sort of regurgitating that to an extent. We tried to move and encourage the export-oriented businesses, and in September, there was an announcement that the upcoming wheeling auctions will transparently allocate over 800 megawatts of demand to market participants. Now, this initiative will open the door for industry, bulk consumers to procure energy at competitive rates, and help reduce energy costs, improve reliability, latency, strengthen Pakistan's overall industrial competitiveness, because that's very key to actually look at Pakistan from a unique selling point perspective. On the logistical efficiency, the Pakistan single window is now fully integrated with 74 government agencies. Now, our target is simple: clearance in hours, not days or weeks. We are removing the human interface. Every hour your container sits at Karachi port, you lose money, and we lose credibility. So we cannot just export more. We need a sniper's precision, not a shotgun approach. My analysis identified 5 growth corridors which can be considered for widening and deepening exports by this community. So let's take the obvious ones. the US corridor, that's about value addition. We sell them over $5.6 billion worth of goods, mostly bed sheets, while Bangladesh and Vietnam, they sell them apparel. But the world currently demands man-made fiber, synthetic sportswear. We do some of it, but not enough. The US imports $40 billion of it. We capture less than 1%. Why? Because we tax the import of the staple fiber there. So let our textile sector evolve from covering beds to clothing, athletes, and Gen Z. That's the future. And that's what gets you a higher return as well. We recently also, as you know, concluded some historic trade engagements with the United States, and we are pushing for tariff rationalization on man-made fibers. If you invest in technology to transition from cotton to synthetics, we will ensure that the regulatory duties are phased out. We need to take a larger chunk of that $40 billion synthetic apparel market. The second, and again very familiar territory, is the EU corridor. That's about compliance. Now here the game is about food and certified textiles. Most of you know it, but I'll repeat it again because it's very important that it sinks in with people who would want to be in this sector and contribute to Pakistan's exports. I want everyone to write down a date, 24th of November 2026. On this day, another South Asian country graduates from least developed country status. What does that mean for us? It means they lose their duty-free, everything but arms access to the EU. Unless they sign a new deal, their apparel exports will face tariffs. Pakistan, however, retains GSP+. From late 2026, we will have a 10% price advantage over one of the fiercest competitors in our biggest market. This is a tactical window. It will not last forever. The government's commitment to supporting industry in a climate-compliant manner is reflected in the LTTF via the State Bank scheme, and that enables businesses to upgrade their boilers, solarize their factories. Many of you may have done it. More should follow. Take that as an advantage that you can utilize to make your product more compliant. We will help you meet the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, so you can take more market share that way. The third corridor is the Africa corridor. That's about connectivity. Look Africa, engage Africa cannot just be a slogan. African countries need affordable medicine and rugged machinery. The opportunity there could be Kenyan hospitals who want our pharmaceuticals, but they can't register at times that easily. So the solution could be definitely establish FDA and EMA approved labs in Pakistan. It should be noted that TRAP, most of you may have been dealing with them if you are in the pharmaceutical sector. They've streamlined their processes of registering medical devices. It used to take months. Now it takes weeks, and this can be further fine-tuned. The fourth corridor that we should actually explore and as a new frontier, where there's a problem, is the distance, and that's here and exporting to Latin America. Brazil, Chile, Argentina, these are bigger markets to look at. Even Mexico in Central America. They buy millions of dollars of surgical instruments. Right now, they buy them from Germany, mainly. But guess what? Germany buys them from Salcourt because they package and they sell them better. So another area to explore is our tractors, right? Millet, Al-Ghazi, they're all world class. They're rugged, mechanical, they're repairable. They're perfect for African nations. The sale follows the service, and that's where you can actually monetize better, which requires long-term relationship building initiatives where Africans are looking towards Asia for co-investment, not just for trade. These markets, they can be supported through MOFA as well, and who are very keen to help. We have 20 missions across Africa, which can actually galvanize the momentum of Pakistan investment into African countries and building the supply chain and retaining that in a sustainable manner. The last engine, which everyone is very familiar with, is the IT and the services. So Pakistan exported over $3.1 billion of IT services in the fiscal year that ended in June this year. And we had a bumper high of 386 million in October this year. The Honorable Prime Minister has set a target, $30 billion of IT exports in the next 5 years. $30 billion in IT exports by 2030. To achieve this, we are restructuring NITV, and we understand for you, internet speed is currency. So we are treating digital infrastructure as critical national security infrastructure. The Honorable Prime Minister has directed that the spectrum auction to be completed by next quarter, followed by the 5G licensing in the following year. We already took measures via the State Bank of Pakistan to allow 50% retention of your proceeds into the exporters' specialized foreign currency accounts, while usage of the balances available in the accounts has been simplified by allowing IT exporters to make their payments from these accounts without approvals. For too long, our export strategy has been about seeking subsidies. The next 5 years must be about seeking scale. To the business leaders here, consolidate, merge, acquire. Build companies big enough to handle larger orders from giants you may already be trading with, like Walmart, Amazon, directly now. To my fellow policymakers present and perhaps online, our job is not to manage trade. Our job is to support, assist, and facilitate. Let's get out of the way of those who do the trade. The roadmap is clear. We, the government, we will reduce and refine the tariff regimes, lower the energy costs, and open the diplomatic channels further. You, as a private sector, we request you to consolidate, innovate, and execute. The days of the export culture has arrived. We have the roadmap. We have the will. Now let's just get to work. Pakistan Zindabad.
Public servant. That speaker just kicked in. Very good. Not just refreshing to hear from a public servant, I think it's also the need of the hour. Salman and I were discussing a little bit earlier about the whole idea of subsidies and which industries we subsidize and which ones should we now subsidize, as in which industries we should be, sort of taking our bets on. And I was also glad to see him mention Pakistan single window. Aftab is right here. I messaged him last night, and I called him the czar of making all trade in Pakistan frictionless, and he shied away from that title. And we will get to that, of course, a little bit later. If I could ask everyone, on your tables there are these placards that have these QR codes. If you've already scanned it, kindly rescan it. There's a very quick 3-question poll that we're going to run that will also give us a better idea of the room and maybe helpful in some of the discussions that we have this afternoon. So I'll just give you a minute to just scan that code, and it will take you to the first question. Could we have that slide up, please? Oh, already an answer. Oh. So as you can see, the results will pop up live depending on where people are voting from. So just the QR code right on your desk, scan it, and kindly answer the first question. Interesting. Ms. Robina may not be very happy with those results. Interesting. Okay, can we go to the second question, please? Interesting. Amar Habib, your students really can't cheat on this one. Okay. One vote finally for exports will actually fall. Don't worry, we will not out your name. This is all anonymous. Okay, and can we go to the third and final question, please? This goes back to our conversation, Anna. It has to be finance and energy costs every single time. Okay, great. Good to see some of the diversity in the rooms in terms of how people view certain information. And some of these poll results will come in handy a little bit later as we launch into the discussion. Now, we've heard from Adan Pasha Siddiqui the vision for what the government is trying to achieve and accomplish over the next 5 years. But I think perhaps it is a better idea now to also look at the math that might lead to this. And our first presentation today will come from Ms. Anna Toom from the World Bank. The latest Pakistan Development Update has made waves by quantifying exactly how our anti-export bias is costing us. And to walk us through the numbers and showcase how we can get to that $60 billion export number, please welcome from the World Bank, Ms. Anna Toom.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I think this is very much a treat for the World Bank to have all of you in the room. And the presentation today will focus on the messages that we've presented to government around how to power exports. And I apologize in advance because a lot of the numbers are on aggregate. And I think it represents many of the issues you face, but perhaps that's one source of frustration, that a lot of the nuance and detail can get lost. But I think there is benefit in looking at those aggregate numbers and understanding where Pakistan falls vis-a-vis its comparators and other countries. So hopefully you find this informative. And the keynote speech touches on a lot of the issues that we continuously raise with the government. So it was encouraging to see that the reform momentum is sort of aligned with where we're hoping things go. So this discussion is the second part of our recently launched Pakistan Development Update. And the reason we decided to focus on it is Pakistan right now has, in some respects, maintained or achieved economic stability following the crisis, and is very much looking towards how it can power sustainable economic growth. And one of the key messages we've consistently had for the government is that exports are an essential part of that story and should be prioritized. And the reasons are not new to anyone here, right? Exports are key for foreign exchange. They've been shown, at least in World Bank data, to be very important for productivity, and they are a key driver of growth. But I want to point to the graph on the screen, which shows exports as a share of GDP for Pakistan compared to some income groups and some peer economies. And as you can see, the green line at the bottom is Pakistan, and it shows that over the past 3 or so decades, there's been a consistent decline in exports as a share of GDP. And if you compare it to the upper middle income country group and the lower middle income country group, you can see that it's around half of that rate. And also, our research has shown that Pakistan has an export potential of around 26% of GDP, and right now is only achieving around half of it. And this is the 60 billion export number that Zeeshan mentioned. Thank you. So the big question, at least for us, is how can Pakistan bridge that gap? And as a development organization, and given the importance of exports across these three factors, it's a question that we think about deeply and consistently bring in front of the government Ministry of Finance for discussion. Sorry. Sorry, it sort of jumped. Let me just go back. Okay. So when we dive further down into the numbers, what do we see? And basically, in addition to the exports as a share of GDP declining, there is a less encouraging story when you look at the export base. So what exactly Pakistan's exporting, how, and to where. So if you look at global value chain trade as a share of overall total trade, Pakistan is at the lower end of that graph, which unfortunately you can't see Pakistan, but it's the last bar. And this shows that Pakistan is not engaging in this global value chain trade that we typically see in countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh. And this is a missed opportunity because it's not integrating into these global value chains that bring about extra benefits for productivity, for knowledge transfer, and for job creation. We also see, if you look at a breakdown of Pakistan's exports, it tends to be very narrow in a few products and a few markets. So dominated by textiles, cereals, and cotton, and going mainly to the USA, EU, China market, which also goes to the keynote speaker, emphasizing the importance of breaking into those new markets. He mentioned Latin America, he mentioned Africa, and this is important from a diversification perspective, right? If you are trying to expand your growth model to include exports, you want to do so in a way that's diversified, that's cutting across different products and also cutting across different markets in order for it to be sustainable and a very robust driver of economic growth. And at the bank, the way we think about the challenges very quickly is sort of in two buckets. The distortionary policies on the government side that have kept exports low, persistently low, and also on the structural constraints. On this slide, we just highlight sort of the three distortionary policy areas that we have done research on and continue to advocate for reform. The first is on high import tariffs, which Dr. Robina will talk about in more detail. But in our research, what we've seen is that the Pakistan tariff regime has historically been very complex. That's one. You have the customs duty and then the para-tariffs, ACD-RD, which are implemented on an ad hoc basis. And they also tend to be high, right? So compared to some of the comparator countries, they can be almost double what firms are facing in other countries. And for an investor, this is highly unpredictable, right? You're moving to a country where overnight, the tariff regime you're expecting to face can change. And you're also facing higher costs if you do need to rely on imported inputs. And we think the national tariff policy that has been announced is a step in the right direction. First and foremost is focused on simplifying. With the phase out of the ACDs and RDs, that the business community can have a better understanding of where tariffs will be going and will be sort of more consistent in that sense. And then also for firms that benefit from imported inputs, they would ideally see lower costs. And the graph on the screen shows the import tariff by type of tariff for percent. And you can see for primary and intermediate and capital goods, the dark green bar is the customs duty, and the additional colors are the para-tariffs, the additional customs duty and the regulatory duties. So you can see that in some cases they add 25 to 40% more to the costs faced by firms. In the middle, we talk about the government's high and consistent borrowing due to fiscal imbalances crowding out private sector growth. And it was interesting to see the response from the poll focusing on trade finance. This kind of policy failing and policy distortion is directly linked to the inadequate availability of trade finance for firms. And we see that as all connected. And the World Bank works with the Ministry of Finance on trying to improve its fiscal policy, its fiscal management, precisely to avoid this situation of high government borrowing that's crowding out borrowing too. Hello? Hello, hello? No, it's not. Sorry about that. Hello. Thank you. It's not, okay. Okay, we've also, in our research, focused on trade facilitation barriers as a key impediment to export growth, and Aftab is here, and this is very much his domain, and he's done fantastic work with the PSW. It's now in many respects a world-class example of a national single window, but I will still go through these numbers which are sobering. So we have the enterprise survey at the World Bank that surveys Pakistani firms. And what we see on customs management is, from those responses in Pakistan, it takes about twice the number of days to clear imports than it takes for upper middle income countries. And also on the export side, about double the number of days to clear. And this number has been improving, and it will continue to with the efforts of the Pakistan single window, FBR's transformation agenda, but it's still a binding constraint. And hopefully the momentum and progress on that side continues. We also see in the middle numbers pointing to the firms reporting on their biggest constraints when it comes to compliance and standards. Again, the keynote speaker mentioned access to EU GSP+. All of this relies on making sure that firms are complying with the technical regulations that are laid out in order to access those markets. And we just sort of did a quick analysis with the current trends on standards and compliance. And unless Pakistani firms are able to meet the new requirements, specifically coming out of the EU market for traceability, but also for enhanced reporting of labor standards, over 70% of Pakistan's goods exports could be at risk of losing market access. We also have on the slide the importance of trade agreements. This is an area where we've done quite a bit of research. And here the trade agreements in Pakistan compared to other countries tend to be few in number, but they also tend to be quite narrow. So when Pakistan goes into a trade agreement with another country, they are first and foremost focused on reducing the tariffs between the two countries, which is great. But they lose the opportunity, or they don't take advantage of the opportunity to negotiate terms around investment, around sharing knowledge, sharing technology. And this is a focus that countries like Chile does really well. They are notorious for negotiating some of the best and most comprehensive trade agreements. And this comes from perhaps a capacity issue in MOC, and we continue to work with the government on providing training so that the negotiators are able to move past just the tariff agreements under these trade agreements that they negotiate. Very quickly, we also have consistently presented research looking at the constraints on the firm side. So in Pakistan, firms tend to be small, and the productivity has been stagnant over the years. And like the keynote mentioned and Zeeshan alluded to, the barriers around energy access, digital infrastructure are also quite binding. Pakistan has some of the highest electricity prices compared to peers. And if you look at the digital infrastructure in Pakistan, you would realize that they're also at the bottom of a lot of these rankings when you look at the regulatory environment needed to unlock services exports. Quickly, notable progress has been made. The Pakistan single window, the export facilitation scheme was streamlined. I know a lot of you here have issues with the current EFS, but I think it has come a long way, and hopefully reforms on the government side will continue. It's an area we also stress with the government. And then notably, and one of the topics of today, the recent and historic national tariff policy, we've done some preliminary modeling on this, and in the medium term, we expect that this reform, when fully implemented, will boost exports by around 14%, an improvement in GDP, and also lead to some job creation. Of course, there are adjustment costs to a reform like this, but overall, we think this is the right step in the right direction. So looking ahead, the reforms we continue to emphasize is staying the course on tariff reform. We've also consistently mentioned to the government the importance of maintaining a market-determined and flexible exchange rate. This is important because it goes hand in hand with the tariff reform. The exchange rate is an important automatic stabilizer to make sure that your external sector is in balance. We've also emphasized the need for trade finance and are currently working on an engagement there and an analytical piece on how EXIM can be fully operationalized and kick into gear to support Pakistani firms. We, as many of you know, also work on environmental reforms for the business sector. Customs management standards and compliance is also an area we continue to emphasize, evolving standards in global markets, and also reforms on energy and digital. And these slides will be shared with everyone in this room. We're short on time, but just wanted to give you a sense of the World Bank's thinking on this and how we are presenting the issues when we engage with government. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. And I think you can actually see the connective tissue that exists between the poll that we conducted right before Anna's presentation and this. Anna's covered quite a few of the basics, but I think once we have the diagnosis, perhaps an important area to get into is what might the cure be. The national tariff policy is now being hailed, as Anna has also mentioned, as a historic shift. It aims to reduce the maximum tariff by about 15%, including the removal of parrot tariffs. But what does this implementation actually look like? To explain the architecture of this reform, we have the veteran trade expert who has been in the trenches of these negotiations. Please welcome the former chairperson of the National Tariff Commission, Ms. Robina Athar.
Thank you and good afternoon. I will be brief in presenting what the national tariff policy is. I think there is a lot of talk on national tariff policy. So it's important to actually understand what the tariff policy is and to go into the nitty-gritty of these policies. We have a panel discussion after that, and we have a Q&A session also, so I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I would be very brief in that. Okay. कैसे करना? Okay. So I'm sure I was glad to see that most of the audience know about the tariff policy. So the first tariff policy was introduced in 2019 for 5 years. At that point, we did a lot of research and analysis and like stakeholder consultation. And these were the few issues with the tariff structure for which the tariff policy change was actually recommended. As Anna mentioned and everybody else mentioned, we have one of the highest tariff in the region and also globally. At the same time, our tariff structure is very complex. So there are customs duties, ACDs, RDs, then there is fifth schedule, first schedule. Now within that, there are concessions to certain industries. So it's a very complex structure. And also this kind of complex structure allows manipulation. And we are very familiar, and we all know that how the elite capture that policy wherever there is room for manipulation. Another, I think, which Anna also mentioned, is that our tariff structure is revenue-centric. At one point, 43% of FBR revenue was coming through trade taxes. Now it has slightly gone down, but still it is higher than most of the regional and comparable countries. So another crucial thing which Anna also mentioned was that high tariffs hurt productivity. And that's what we have seen in Pakistan, that we have low productivity. And one of their, analysis, the World Bank mentioned that a 10% increase in upstream tariff actually reduces productivity by 6% in the downstream industry. And another important thing is that small businesses or small exporters are hurt more than the big businesses. Another, I think, is also a fact that when we impose tariff on final goods or finished goods, it actually leads to increase in profitability of the industry and nothing else. It doesn't contribute to productivity, but it only contributes to their profits. And as everybody else mentioned, high tariff act as export duties. They create an anti-export bias. So these were the few, I think, reasons that the new tariff policy was introduced. And like in the previous policy, the 5 major objectives of this policy are to promote export-led growth as compared to the import substitution we've been following for last many years, reduce anti-export bias, improve competitiveness, generate employment, and improve consumer welfare. I think consumer welfare is one aspect which all the policies ignore, and which is a very important factor, but unfortunately at the government, nobody realizes the importance of this. So to be very precise, this is how the policy will go forward. Currently, I mean before last year, these tariffs and by 4th year, ACD will be eliminated, and all RE will be eliminated by 5th year. So simple tariff will go from 20.15 to 9.70. And how this will be done? I think the first step that we have designed in the tariff policy was to adjust the slab. There were so many slabs, so we have transformed. There were 3, 16, 20, and above 20. Last year, in the last budget, we changed them to a slabs of 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20. Next year, it will go to 0, 10, 15, 20. And the biggest change will be in the above 20. So right now, above 20, there are some outliers like auto and some others, which are lying somewhere in 90 and 100. So in the next year, next budget, this will go into in the range of 20 and 50. And then gradually it will reduce to 20, 40, 15, 30. And finally, by the end of 5th year, we will have these 4 slabs, 0, 5, 10, and 15. As I said, ACD will be eliminated gradually each year. 2% ACD on each slab will be reduced each year, and by the 4th year, it will be 0. Similarly, RDs will be reduced, and by the 5th year, it will be 0. Another important, what I mentioned, the 5th schedule, which provides concessional tariff to certain industries, will also be transformed into 1st schedule. There will be no 5th schedule, no concessional tariff. All tariff will be in the 1st schedule, MFN tariff for everyone. So this is how we are moving towards transitioning the 5th schedule to the 1st schedule. Now, this is something Anna mentioned. I think this is one of the major concerns was that whether the tariff reduction or tariff rationalization would contribute to export growth or not. So this is the one analysis done by World Bank, which actually shows that imports will definitely increase, but exports will increase more than increase in import. So the trade deficit will reduce. Tariff revenue at the same time will increase because imports will increase. And similarly, investment, allocative efficiency, and number of jobs will be improved. I think this is most of the discussion around tariff rationalization is that whether it will contribute to export or not. So there are in addition to World Bank analysis, there are a number of other studies. I probably have some with me. So this is the one study which was done by Lahore Journal of Economics. This sums it. So if you increase import of intermediate goods, it definitely leads to exports. So 1% increase in import of intermediate goods increase exports by 0.62%. So similarly, and what are the products or sectors which are, more receptive to decrease in tariff? This includes articles like wood, rubber, plastic, glass, metal, chemicals, and electric appliances. So these are actually, when I show you in the last budget, these are specifically the goods or the sectors which we targeted for tariff reduction. So it also shows that this tariff reduction leads to price stabilization. We did that study in NTC, which showed that 1% decrease in tariff increases volume by 2.8% and decrease prices by 0.6%. So it's also tackle your inflationary trends by reducing the prices of imported goods. Going back. Sorry, I'm going forward. ये वापस कैसे होगा? One more? Yeah, so okay. So this is, I think, as I said, I'll share with you what we did in last budget. So in last budget, the major reduction in tariff was in food, animal feed and seeds, textile, polyester chain, HRC, smuggling prone items like tires and ceramics, IT hardware and software, and chemicals. So these are the major intermediate goods which contribute towards export products. So this is actually would show you what we did in last budget. Tariff on raw materials is decreased by 45%, intermediate goods by 29%, capital goods by 19%, and consumer items by 13%. There are some others. So overall, total tariff average, simple average, has been decreased by 21% in the last budget. And we are expecting the same decrease in the next budget, especially in the tariff, which is above 20, and some in 5% slab. So I think I'll stop here, and I would be very happy to answer any questions maybe later in the panel discussion or afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Ms. Robina. Yeah, I think a lot of the things that you've shared here raise a range of different questions in people's heads in the room. The question in my head is going to be, if we're going to reduce tariffs, where is Pakistan going to make money, and does that mean I'm getting taxed more? It's an immediate question that I would go towards, but we'll cover some of that within the panel. Now we have the data, we've heard the policy. I think it's time to maybe do the reality check, so we'll launch towards the panel. Because one of the key questions here would then be, sure, we can go ahead and do all of these reforms, but at the end of the day, do these reforms, for example, survive the next super flood? Do they survive the fiscal deficit, which Amar Habib will tell you, since him and I worked on this for almost 8 months in 2024. We're always operating in a fiscal deficit. Are any of our businesses actually ready to give up a lot of their protections that they've been afforded over the last few decades to these global giants? I'm joined by a very powerhouse panel. I'm not going to go to the detailed introductions of these individuals, because if I were to do that, that would take up the next 3 to 4 hours, and so I'll just call them up on stage. Dr. Zeelaf Munir, chairperson of the Pakistan Business Council and CEO of English Biscuit Manufacturers, the voice of the private sector, who is asking for a level playing field and not a hand. Well, anywhere you'd like. Ms. Robina Athar, welcoming her back to the stage to defend the policy against the pressures of revenue collection. Sayyid Muhammad Naqi, one of my oldest friends in the world, CEO of Premier Code, the innovator proving that made in Pakistan technology is a reality and not just a dream. And finally, my friend Aftab Haider, the CEO of Pakistan Single Window, the man tasked with making our borders invisible and frictionless. Once again, I'll remind the audience that there is a QR code on your table that is now live. If you scan that QR code again, it will take you to a page where you can submit questions, either to the panel in general or to a specific speaker, and we'll try to address some of those questions in the Q&A session as we come up. We're going to speak for roughly about 60 minutes. I'll toss some questions to the panelists. First, let's talk about the diagnosis, the revenue addiction versus overall growth strategy. And I think because Robina was the last person to speak up on the dais, perhaps the first question I'll toss over to you. And I think it's the hardest question. You led the National Tariff Commission. You know the tension that exists between the FBR and the needing revenue and the industry needing cheap raw materials. The World Bank report confirms that high tariffs on intermediate goods decreases productivity by 10.6%. So effectively, for all intents and purposes, we are taxing our own growth. How do we reconcile this sort of binary between these two elements? And in this moment, can the state finally admit that taxing inputs is, in fact, a failed strategy?
Yeah, I think that's why this tariff policy was designed and conceived of, because the government now realizes that we are taxing through tariffs, we are taxing our own growth. And there were a lot of debate on whether it will create some balance of payment issues, what would happen to the imports, what would happen to the FBR revenue. And I think if I share with you, the last 5 months data shows that FBR revenues have increased. There is increase in import. There is a little dip in exports, but increase in imports is not actually due to tariff change. Imports have increased more in products where there is no tariff change. So I think we understand, and I think everybody now understands. So when the economy is growing, if you want to grow, you want economy to grow, you have to, you should expect increase in imports. And if this import is going into your production process, if there is more increase in intermediate imports or capital goods, so this would increase your growth. So I think after a very long time, there is this realization within government that we should follow this path rather than what we were doing previously.
I think the central question, though, just a very quick follow-up, still remains. Can the NTC then actually hold the line against the revenue pressure brought upon by the FBR, or will the 5.4% of fiscal deficit, result 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the line in a reversal of all of this?
No, I think as Anna also showed and I showed you, that not immediately, but within period of 3 to 5 years, export will rise. And as I've shown, the model shows that increase in exports would be more than increase in imports. So I think the balance of payment issues will be handled by this. Of course, tariff alone cannot do the miracle. There are other, as we said, energy, there is financing. So all these things together would actually promote export. And if exports are more than, increase in exports is more than they're rising, better than imports, definitely balance of. And at the same time, we are lucky enough to having remittances. Remittances are increasing. Mm-hmm. So in a way, in a near future, our balance of payment situation is under control.
Inshallah. And yes, the idea behind the extraordinary costs of energy, as well as the fact that the private sector is almost completely crowded out by the excessive government borrowing from domestic markets. These are issues that we will address a little bit later in the conversation. But let me pivot a little bit to Dr. Zeelaf. Dr. Zeelaf, Robina is fighting the policy battle, but you're fighting the market battle. In fact, the World Bank highlights a comfort zone where firms find it safer to sell locally because of these protectionist measures than to export. And from the perspective of the Pakistan Business Council, for example, is this anti-export bias real? Is it simply safer for Pakistani companies to stay domestic? And if so, how do we break out of this cycle?
I would first like to thank Tabadlab for having me and having all of us here for this extremely important discussion. So in the 1990s, I will get to your question of whether there is safely going towards domestic. In the 1990s, the exports were around 16% of the GDP. Now we know they hover around 10%. Vietnam, 90% of GDP. Thailand, 60% of GDP. Even India, 20% of GDP. So is there an anti-export bias? I think the answer is yes, there is an anti-export bias. Now, coming to why it is also so. So the math also, both the speakers have already suggested that 10%, this study quoted by the World Bank, a 10% increase in tariff leads to 2.5 to 10%, 2.5 to, I've just heard 10%, 6.5% decrease in productivity, which is what the math is showing. So yes, we cannot be exporting our taxes. That is a reality. We cannot be exporting our taxes. At the same time, if you look at, these are multifactorial challenges. So it's not just that the tariffs. If you look at energy costs, if you look at ease of doing business, if one looks at the excessive taxation, if one looks at the not only excessive taxation, lack of playing field between the formal and the informal sector, which actually includes all the dumping that takes place. So it's not just what is imported, it is also what are you doing about what is imported through gray channels. So multiple factors, cost of raw materials. I'll now give you an example. So all the big exporters who are in PVC, the principles are the same. I'll use the example of my own company. We are in the food sector. So all of these factors, energy cost, taxation, and informal sector being, getting away with whatever they want to do. In addition to that, so yes, tariffs. In addition to that, the input costs are higher. I have to pay regulatory duties on from oil to packaging to flavors to all intermediate goods. So yes, all of that is there. And then in addition to that, all the challenges that we spoke about, including non-tariff barriers. I think there was some mention of the regulatory. It is a huge challenge. There is no database of all the countries, their regulations, whether it is food regulation, whether it is pharma regulation. There is no authority. The exporters have to run pillar to post to find out for individual countries. What are your trade missions doing? What are the investment and trade officers? What is their capacity? What are they doing to study the markets, the demand, and then be able to direct? We were talking about Africa. What do you know about Africa? So, yes, so all of these are challenges that also exist. So, yes, we should not be exporting our taxes, absolutely, but also create the environment where business can expand. Now, coming to your question of, is it safer to be, yes, because of all of these factors, it is safer to be expanding into the domestic market. But is that good? It has cost us our relevance. We are just 0.12% in merchandise and probably 0.09% in services of the global trade. So yes, it's costing us. And what is the solution is getting to address these challenges. It's not about protecting as much as it is about providing access. And once that is facilitated, I would think that businesses should be responding.
Thank you, Dr. Zeelaf. I think that's the positive and optimistic outlook that almost everyone on this panel has while still being grounded in reality. And that grounding in reality, I think, Naqi, I'll come to you next. We've spoken multiple times now about protectionism versus competitiveness. And you know, you're building decode smartphones. And you're not just assembling, you're trying to build a brand, you're trying to make it globally competitive. It's one of the first factories that has been set up right here in the city of Karachi. The Country Economic Memorandum report by the World Bank from 2 years ago that I highlighted earlier states that Pakistan has the second highest import duty cascading in the world. This protects you, obviously, but it also manages to, sort of trap you and put you in this sort of prison. And so if the government were to follow Dr. Zeelaf's advice and continue implementing what Ms. Robina has been doing for some time, does that free you up from worrying about survival, start investing in innovation, creativity, R&D, and move more towards, the areas that could make us truly stand out in a global market, instead of the word I believe that you and I have used in the past is being the darzi of the world, or the stitcher of the world?
Thank you, Zeeshan, for inviting, and thank you to the Tabadlab team as well. Really honored to be in part of such highly skilled people as well. I'll try to divide. I think it should be. I'll try to divide this into two. Primarily, if you look at IT and all, we should divide it into the information technology, which is the computer side, and the other side is the mobile phone side. While we're protecting the computer side and all as well, the mobile phone side, pretty much it is standardized when it comes to CBU import compared to SKD import. Yes, we were part of the protectionist regime from 2020 to 2023, where the first mobile phone policy. When the first mobile phone policy was there, but since it has lapsed in 2023, there has been none. So pretty much this taxation structure is similar. So it's actually expensive to build phones in Pakistan compared to getting CBUs from outside. And there have been certain reports for that as well. But if we come to think of it, and if you look at it, we're still importing 95% of the CBU. The phones are being imported as part of SKD rather than CBUs. So that is one thing, because the factories have already been set up. Other than Apple, pretty much every international or leading brand is in Pakistan. But they're doing it through their partners. They're not coming directly. That is one thing. When it comes to the R&D side or investing and becoming export powerhouse, I think it's a far-fetched idea for us. If you look at it on the mobile phone, I'm talking specifically on the mobile phone sector, primarily because the principles are not here. There's no value addition in the channel right now. And the volumes in Pakistan are not big enough for them to start putting in their components factories in Pakistan. we've had examples of China. China's yearly consumption of smartphone is 350 million compared to 25 million of Pakistan. India's yearly consumption is close to 250 million. US is number 3 right now with almost 200 million. We saw an example of Vietnam as well. We've seen that Samsung is one of the largest exporters from Vietnam. But there was a reason that Samsung went to Vietnam. They were forced out of China. In 2011, if you look at the volume share of Samsung in China, it would, from being one of the largest players, it became one of the smallest players. Their volume share dropped to 2%. So they were forced out by the Chinese brands other than Apple. Apple has its own ecosystem and all. So they were forced out. They looked at Vietnam as an alternate. And, but I've been told at that point in time that even Samsung came to Pakistan as well. But they chose Vietnam over Pakistan. And similar thing has happened with Apple. So they're moving away from China and setting up a base where they have their volume structures as well. For us, the protectionists and spending on the R&D and all, yes, as local brands, the R&D spending has started happening. And we're amongst the first ones who have designed local smartphones, both hardware-wise and semantic-wise. We're trying to bring in the intellectual property. We're currently, right now, in Pakistan, is close to 0. We're trying to bring that in. We're trying to bring in the value addition, and slowly and gradually we're going to bring it. For us to become an export powerhouse and all, we have to start investing on certain of our own brands. We have to, we've said, we have to start raising our own kids rather than raising others, which we've been doing for the past 70 years. I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of those frictions have to be removed. Pakistan, of course, has certain advantages. For example, we have the labor advantage here. We don't have the energy advantage here compared to Vietnam, for example. The example that you also brought up, energy costs in Pakistan are almost twice as high as they might be in Vietnam for doing practically anything. And so there's a lot of friction in the system. Aftab, I'll ask the simplest question of you. As a person who is principally responsible for removing friction from the system, building these digital corridors that allow people to just go to one spot to be able to fix all of their issues and remove any kind of barriers. What are some of the things that people like Naqi what would you prioritize first for people like Naqi in order for that to be facilitated?
Thank you very much, Zeeshan. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Let me start by saying thank you for inviting me here, Tabadlab, and sharing the stage with some great people. It's not every day that you listen from practitioners who actually go through the pains of cross-border trade, whether it's administrative, whether it's border compliance, whether it's tariffs and taxes, whether it's just making your books right so you are paying what is due to the state and not getting into a lot of bureaucracy. So thank you very much for that. Before I start, I would also like to comment on your comment about me being the Tsar, because the Tsars didn't end well. So, I'm already quite cautious about my future in Pakistan. But anyways, thank you so much. It's one of the reasons that I always feel very happy in coming to these events is because I think it gives me an opportunity to showcase what Pakistan Single Window is, because there's a lot of talk about Pakistan Single Window, but who we are and what do we do, a lot of people don't know about that. And we are not a policy-making body, so I can't make any announcements on reducing tariffs, or I can't even make any announcements on bringing more FDI to help businesses like Naqi, for example, or explore markets. But what we do, and what we do really well now, is to reduce the friction that the traders would face in conducting cross-border trade. So, as a success story that is now emerging out of Pakistan, we are a digital platform that has connected 28 government agencies, more than 97,000 traders, 29 banks to provide end-to-end visibility from the moment you open a letter of credit with your bank to import something to the time that that good is delivered at your warehouse. We get that full visibility. And we don't share it with FBR. So it's not that we are collecting that information and giving it over to the tax authorities, but what it helps us to do is to collect all that information and provide it to anyone who wants that for research, analysis, marketing, and to the public sector for making informed decision making. And in our work, what we have found out, Zeeshan, basically is that businesses in Pakistan are facing three major problems other than tariffs. It's access to finance, of course. You have these great, brilliant ideas, but you don't have finance. You go to the banks, banks don't have visibility over what you do, so they won't give you finance, and especially businesses that are led by women and businesses that are what we call the SME sector are especially hard hit on that. Second issue is access to information, like what Madam Zeelaf just mentioned, that there is not a single database that provides all the regulations that you are subject to. So that's also one of the things. But you can also include that information asymmetry to markets and people. Where are you going to sell your products? Where in Africa? Where in Latin America? What are the standards that you need to follow for export of those products? And the third, of course, is business-to-business connectivity. So we, as a digital platform, are now working towards addressing all these three gaps. In the first part, we have begun to reduce the friction for imports and exports. So we have started reducing the time that it takes for a consignment to go through the borders and be delivered at the warehouse. We make it completely paperless. We reduce the administrative levels. We make sure that bureaucracy is now to a minimum. We have recently introduced an integrated risk management system. So if you need a certification or a permit, even from an agency other than customs, you don't need to visit their offices. The computer itself will decide and issue you a permit. So that's one thing that we are doing. And now we are building digital products that will help businesses in Pakistan to connect with businesses abroad, or to become more sellable in the EU and US market. So think about digital product passports. That's something that the Ministry of Commerce is really interested in, and we are in discussions with the Ministry of Commerce to create a platform, a national traceability platform, so that Pakistani businesses can sell. And the very final point on that, Zeeshan, is that at the end of the day, it's not technology, and this is not my concluding comment, by the way, but it's just not technology that helps exports. A lot of things have to go right. We provide a technology platform. We'll do a lot of change management. We'll help in implementing that. But at the end of the day, the Pakistani businesses are not really stepping up, improving their own quality of the products, making their products according to what is really selling in the market abroad, or making sure that intellectual property rights are protected of the foreign investors or foreign buyers who are investing in that product and creating a design or something. The product will not really sell. So it's not just the government that has to work. It's also the private sector that has to work. I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, and Aftab, and I think that underlines a very important point, that this is not just a fight to be fought by the public sector alone or just by policies. It has to be fought by the private sector. It has to be fought by innovators, entrepreneurs, business owners, and so on. Ms. Robina, Naqi spoke a little bit about the sort of infant industry argument. For a very long time, we've subsidized a range of different sectors in Pakistan, right? Indirectly automobiles, we've also subsidized fertilizers, we've subsidized the textile industry. And one of the arguments you hear is that these then never really grew up, so to speak, to dominate the globe like Vietnam did, like Bangladesh did, considering their, for example, textile imports. So how do we ensure that this new tariff policy does not just create another layer or another generation of lazy industries? And did we miss that sort of boat on strategic protection? And now we're always going to be sort of chasing this curve.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. This is, as I mentioned earlier, the basic objective of this tariff policy. When when you give protection to industry, as we have seen, it drops your productivity. And as we have seen, it increases your profitability. So when your productivity is low, your profitability is high, you are inclined to sell in the domestic market. You have no incentive to go for exports. So this is the major factor that this tariff policy is designed in such a way that industries would be compelled to go for increase in their productivity through innovation, through R&D. Unfortunately, you would see the major industry in Pakistan still going through using the obsolete technology. Their plants are many, many years old. Nobody has invested in new technology. For instance, if energy costs are high, you won't see any energy investing in energy efficient technologies. Most of the energy intensive industry is still using the old technology, the cement, the soda ash, like all the steel. They are still using the older technologies. So I think that's the reason, and that's what we are trying to do, to compel the businesses to go for efficiency by lowering the tariffs on machinery and all that equipment, and by compelling them to sell at the international to prices. Right now, if you impose 20% tariff on a certain product, which means that you are allowing the business to sell in the local market 20% higher than the international price. So if they are compatible or they go for international prices, only then they would be able to export. So I think all this effort, removing the frictions, reducing the tariff, and energy prices, energy cost has definitely gone down, finance cost has gone down. So all these things will help to businesses to innovate and to become more efficient. Yeah.
Absolutely agreed. And I think whether we like it or not, there will be, if we are to truly do this and continue this path, as the World Bank has commented, we should continue down the road that we have started on. I think there's going to be a significant amount of pain, particularly for some local industries and individuals that have relied on these, sort of, the word used here is lazy, but, they've exploited the protectionism mechanisms. Dr. Zeelaf, I'm going to stick with this tension for just a little bit longer. Many local manufacturers fear that tariff reduction, effectively what it'll do is it will flood the market with cheap products. And that, is something that, of course, has to be addressed. And there's a real danger of that actually ending up happening. But is the private sector's concern about losing protection, or is there a different perspective on this type of reform?
I understand the skepticism about thinking that the private sector wants protectionism. Mm-hmm. What I believe is the challenges are multifactorial. We've spoken about a lot of them. What I would include in that is if an environment and a system has been created where it is easier to lobby for subsidies and protectionism, why would the businesses be spending millions in R&D? So there is an environment that also allowed that to happen. When that was being done, was there any follow-up of that many years? Were there any KPIs to see what it would lead to? Were there any sunset clauses? Was there any effort to address the challenges that were being faced that were, the result that were leading to what you call, or what is protectionism? BBC, which represents the largest businesses, is also pivoting towards recognizing and addressing that. We are now, it's not just on taxation and tariff that we publish reports. We are doing in-depth, deep dive studies on areas where it is about innovation, technology, whether it is agri-tech, drones, satellites, startups, adding to the global value chain. So yes, there is a realization that it is not protectionism that is going to be even expanding or scaling industry. It is having the right environment to be able to compete globally in the world. Change of mindset, yes, and also the right environment to be able to do that.
Agreed. That is actually an interesting segue because we've now juxtaposed the two ideas against each other. But there are, of course, as we saw in the poll earlier, Anna alluded to it, these sort of invisible barriers that still exist, some of which we've sort of addressed here. So Aftab, I'll ask you the next question. And I ask this question partially because there's a certain amount of experience that I also have with the issue. I've worked on bilateral trade, particularly with Afghanistan, for quite some time. I remember there was a point in time when a truck would leave Karachi port and it would drive over 2 days and the driver would sleep in various locations along the path. And it would get to Peshawar. And then from Peshawar to Torkham, which is about 60, 70 kilometers, it would take 30 days. So, Robina can introduce all of the tariff reforms. You can digitize as much as possible. But can we bureaucracy-proof it? Can we proof it from geopolitical tensions? How do we solve some of those bigger issues that also contribute to this?
Well, thank you very much. I think that's a great question. And, one of the biggest challenges that we have faced, or generally every single window operator would face, is bureaucratic resistance and the mindset. Because when you are basically digitalizing processes like we are doing, you are taking away a lot of discretionary authority that the officials have in the public space. You are making their processes and procedures more transparent, which means that information is available to everyone. So, I used to serve as a customs officer in Karachi. The last time I served was in 2014. And still very much possible for anyone to go into the system and take out the logs of what I've done, whether it was done right or wrong. And single window just takes it several steps upwards because now it's also possible to log the performance of all the government officials who are connected to the single window platform for issuance of the licenses, permits, certificates, and all of that. So, accountability, no one likes accountability. And that is where you see that there's a lot of resistance. But also, in our experience, a lot of resistance also comes because a lot of people don't really understand what digitization means. Are they going to lose their jobs? Are they going to, in genuine terms, lose their control? Because all of these paper forms, all of these bureaucratic processes are there to regulate a certain activity, and therefore you need to engage with them and talk to them of how the digital solution is going to address those solutions. And I'm very glad to see that my manager, change management, is actually here attending this event. And I must mention that something that we are doing absolutely fantastic. Last year we were able to reach out to about more than 11,000 people, including government officials, on how to manage this entire single window ecosystem. Not many public sector agencies do that. And the approach that we have taken is to isolate ourselves from all the external factors. So geopolitical situation, there's something that's going on at the Pak-Afghan border. The Indian border is closed, of course. With Iran, it's a really tough neighborhood that we're working in, living in.
Can't pick your neighbors.
The only friendly neighbor that we have is probably the Indian Ocean. So there's a lot of customization that you have to do to address all of these situations. You are trading with Iran, but you can't do a banking transaction. So how do you do that? You're trading with Afghanistan, but you are not getting any data in return. So how do you manage all of that? So the approach that we have taken is a very phased implementation. Go bit by bit, make small changes, but with high impact. Make it easy for all the stakeholders, including the traders, including the public sector officials, to kind of acquaint themselves with the changes that we are bringing. But at the same time, be very neutral, be very open in what we do. So there's a lot of data that is going through our system, and that data is now being used to make these things, these processes more transparent, make the decision making more informative for the benefit of the traders. At the very last point that I would make here, Zeeshan, is that one of the things that single window has done really well in Pakistan is that we are not a government-centric platform. So although I am heading a government company, it's a state-owned enterprise, The platform itself is very, very user-driven. So all the technology, all the process flows, all the work that is done is taken with the perspective of how is it going to facilitate the trader. And I think this is one of the biggest points that has made it a success story so far in Pakistan. But coming back to the question, there would be geopolitical tensions, there would be bureaucratic resistance. The choice that you have is not to sit back and be overwhelmed by that, is just to deliver more. And the very last thing, because there's been a lot of talk, Naqi, about Apple. So we have adopted the model that Apple uses, and that is to every month in the single window platform, we will be delivering you a new feature or a new service or integrating a new government agency or just doing something new. So you remain engaged. And I've heard these comments about Aftab Saab, हमारी lifetime में तो ये नहीं हो सकता, single window नहीं बनेगी. The day we rolled out in 2022, I sent out the first email to that gentleman in Karachi, ये हो गया. आपकी lifetime में हो गया, मेरी lifetime में भी हो गया, and this is how we keep people engaged.
You're not going to share that gentleman's name, are you?
No.
No, I think those are great points, and we've covered, geopolitical tensions, we've covered bureaucratic hurdles. Dr. Zeelaf, I'll come to you. One of the things we alluded to a little bit earlier was, of course, the high cost of power, as well as the private sector getting crowded out. I know so many examples of, private businesses that are trying to do good, that have good credit, that are led by good people, that are going to these banks to seek small loans, like not even massive amounts. 2 million here, 3 million here, maybe to meet payroll, or maybe to just purchase some equipment or IT infrastructure that would allow them to do the things they need to do. But they are completely crowded out. So the question here then becomes, if the government were to eliminate all tariffs tomorrow, forget 2030, tomorrow you just flick a button and all of it's done, would exports automatically surge, or are we kind of trapped because of these energy costs and because of this liquidity trap that we've put ourselves into?
I think you've answered your question yourself. Yes, energy competitiveness, we are 14 to 16 cents per kilowatt hour. Bangladesh, I believe, is 10. Vietnam, I believe, is like 7, 6, something like that. There's no bank open. 80% of the credit is to basically taking care of the government deficit. So yes, that is definitely a huge issue. It's just 11% of the GDP that is available for credit to these to anybody who wants credit, even for their cash flows, like you're talking about the small and medium-sized enterprises, because there's really no incentive or motivation to be really going out and looking at what their credit scores are or what they can do, or knowledge base from that side. Logistics. We are bleeding at the ports, bleeding inefficiencies at the ports. So our ease of logistics index coming down from 110 to 122. So all of these are real issues and bottlenecks. So yes, we would want to move from being protected by tariffs to a regime that encourages export, at the same time giving us the environment that the businesses then can compete globally. So I think all of this goes hand in hand.
Absolutely. Ms. Robina, I know you have a flight to catch at 6 p.m. I was going to ask this question towards the very end, but I'll just bring it up so that We don't keep you from your flight. I would hate to get that call from the airport. Looking at the next 5 years, and I've brought this up very briefly before, we were to implement this policy, we get a lower tariff regime, it gets slashed by 15%, all of these para-tariffs are removed. In your view, with everything that you've seen so far, having observed this very closely, do you see our what I would call zombie firms shape up, or will you actually see the vast majority of them kind of just die out? In other words, are we actually ready for this level of political pain, considering some of the connections, and you know how Pakistan is, everyone knows everybody else, and please don't do this and please don't do that, and that kind of political pressure, of course, has a bearing on the direction in which a previously announced policy might go.
In reforms, always there are winners and losers. Some industry definitely would be impacted by this tariff reduction. And for your information, government has very clearly decided that there is a steering committee who's looking to the implementation of this tariff policy. The steering committee has decided that we will identify the industries which are impacted by, and there would be some measures to address the impact of tariff on those industries. What I see is mostly the energy-intensive industries, but energy-intensive industries, the problem is energy and not tariff. Unfortunately, what happened over the years in Pakistan is that industry is seeking benefit from tariff and not emphasizing the other issues. And I think one good thing which I expect to happen is that once tariffs are reduced, there would be more push on other factors to bring reforms in those areas like energy and finance and all that. Most of the energy route right now is asking for what they call the cost equalization tariff. And my answer to them was, what is that cost equalization tariff? What would be the formula for that? So actually there is no formula for that. So I think what Zeelaf also mentioned, there are other costs. If you look at, not most of the industry is energy intensive. Energy cost in all other sectors, barring few, is not 2 or 3% of their total costs. So there are other costs also, and we have an advantage in labor costs, but there are, of course, other costs which totally then jack up the cost of manufacturing. Energy is definitely an issue, and government is working on it, reducing energy costs. And I think we are also, along with the tariff changes, we are open to address the issues of those industries which are impacted by tariff. Of course, some industry would be affected, but there is room for their improvement also.
I mean, I'm hoping that is also the case. I think the argument here is that kharbuze ko dekh ke kharbuza rang pakarta hai. So if we were to do this reform, perhaps other sectors would just
I think that's the basic idea.
Precisely. Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Robina. We really appreciate you being here. I understand that you need to make your way to the airport. So take care. So wrapping up the discussion, Naqi, I'm going to come to you. There's a terrifying statistic in the World Bank PDU report, and I discussed that with you on the floor right here. And that statistic was that when we were to look at Pakistani firms, this is the survey that they run, the number of Pakistani firms that have introduced a new product or process in the last 3 years sits at 2%. I mean, innovation, for all intents and purposes, is a dead industry in Pakistan. This is, I mean, you could call it a lack of innovation, you could call it a crisis of ambition, you could call it lack of creativity, and of course there's a lot of other factors. You can't just blame it on the industry. And we've spoken about how firms can be lazy, but a lot of the conversations that I've been having recently use the word exhaustion, that they're just exhausted by some of the regimes that they are subjected to and the friction that exists in there. And I know, Aftab, you're bumbling to answer that question. I'll come back. I'll come back to you as well. But as somebody who is trying to build that local brand, who's set up a factory in Karachi, who's trying to work on localization, who has grand ambitions for Pakistan becoming this hub of smartphone exports around the world, how do you address that?
We can't always blame the government for everything. I think most of the times, if it's partly the government, it's partly the businesses as well. I'm sorry, I might be taken wrong, but for the past 70, 75 years, we've just been a warm body provider. We don't want to change. We don't have any intention to change. All we want to do is just provide something where we're not doing anything. We're just following a process. And that is one of the major reasons that you're seeing is that we're not making building products. We're just providing services. And when you're providing services, you're not innovating anything. And that has been one of the major key contributors that this study has come out, that only 2 to 3% or 2 to 3 products are coming out. That is one of the major gaps that we see. For us to do that, I think we need to change a lot of things. We need to change the entire education system as well. That is one of the biggest barriers in providing quality human resources to the world. We need to step that thing up as well. We need to move ourselves away from a trading mindset, which we have been for the longest period of the time. And we need to start becoming innovators. And as Ms. Zeelaf has said, and had said as well, that we have to start giving opportunities to our people as well. And I think once we start providing that, it is going to provide, this study will change. And I think with the new policies that government is working on, I think we're very clear right now that whatever has happened in the past 70, 75 years, it needs to change. We need a hard reset. And that hard reset is going to come right now. It is with this younger generation, it is going to come in right now. There was a point earlier by Ms. Zeelaf that you had said that why the local brands are just happy selling it here as well. We've not given them the opportunities. While setting up opening up a new country, it's a very difficult thing. You need to invest heavily on setting up a new country. And we don't get any support. Our missions globally, or we don't have any support from them to set up a new country because they've not worked on the commercial side to set things up or open up new countries for us. So it goes hand in hand that while we are working to open up new countries or exports, we need support from there to help us open up, guide in that industry as well. And there was another question. I'm sorry, I'm taking your question that if all the tariffs are to be removed today, will Pakistan be exporting? No, not today, but maybe in 5 to 6 years. Because once all these things are done, in order to open up new export countries, we need time. Things are not going to happen overnight. And that is one of the basic problems in Pakistan, that we want everything done overnight. This needs to change.
Great. I'm going to introduce you to some people in the room because we have some of those commercial and trade officers in the room today, actually. So it might be good for you to connect with them and share some of your concerns. Dr. Aftab, I'll let you come in right there and then because I think that is directly related to some of the things that you are doing, particularly the integration of the banking sector, and whether or not something like PSW can help, how do I put this politely, unclog the financial veins, and prevent this massive heart attack that we're sort of headed towards. But before you answer that, Naqi, the only thing that I would add to that is, I don't know if we'll have time to cover that. Maybe we can cover that in the Q&A. But one of the things that we keep discussing is, yes, education reform is necessary, but that's a long-term prospect, right? Like, even if we were to fix the education sector today, we wouldn't see the dividends of that in 12, 15 years, or whatever number of years that batch of kids goes through and has all of those necessary life skills and things of that nature. So, can the great balancing force right now be this massive advent of AI, for example, and how that can play an integral role in, fixing some of these issues and short-circuiting some of these things? Just a quick response to that before we go off that.
So even if you look at it, what we're seeing right now is outsourcing, which has been one of the key pillars and
That's why I
we've
went
been investing heavily on it, that we need to enable our outsourcing engines and all. They're diminishing. So AI is actually replacing them. So we have to be very careful on what we are doing, and maybe AI is going to help a lot of things, but it's going to be, it's in a short-term thing, it's going to be a certain dent on our exports as well, especially the IT exports. So for us, I think it's very clear there's no such thing as short-term. Anything that we have to do, if we start doing today, will have long-term implications.
Great. Aftab.
I think, Zeeshan, this is a very interesting discussion. One consistent theme that is coming up is that, you have to be patient with the reforms. You have to be patient to see the impact of what is going to come up. So, if I take a single window example, a lot of people in the room would not know that we actually started working on the single window program in 2017. And, I was used to be part of FPR at that time, and I must give credit to the team in FPR, especially from Pakistan Customs, who actually resisted put up a lot of resistance to the government at that time that we will not deliver now. We need time to create something, design something that is consistent with best practices, and we'll start giving you the dividends. The same analogy applies to all the government policies. I've seen that happening, that there would be a tariff reduction, but after a few years, there would be revenue pressure, and then your policy will start going into reverse. Those of us who have worked in FPR have seen that happening. So how do we safeguard against that? That's an issue. At the same time, the emerging technologies are making a lot of difference. But I think also that this buzz surrounding AI also needs to be tampered with. Applying AI is just not easy. It's not cheap. We are applying AI on customs, and I think you talked about customs reforms in Pakistan. Part of that reforms is also applying artificial intelligence techniques on how clearance happens. But very quickly we found out that it's very easy to train the algorithm, but it's very difficult to get the GPUs that are required to run those algos, because they have not been whitelisted by the US government for certain countries. And so you need a certification from the US government that's going to take 7-8 months just to get the GPU in place. Number two, in most of the reform efforts that we design or talk about, whether it's the donor side or whether it's the public sector side, we never ever consider two things: the cost of hardware, how much is it going to cost to establish the hardware and maintain a data center, and number two, how are you going to bring the HR for that? I run an IT company. It is emerging as one of the biggest trade tech IT companies in Pakistan. We have a strength of more than 330 people now. I struggle to find good AI resources because they're just not there in the market. Everyone is freelancing or working outside. So these are some of the things, but I wanted to just add to that discussion. But in terms of what single window is doing now about the financial sector and the banking sector, it's not our core mandate. Our core mandate is to reduce the friction, as you mentioned very early on, in the trade processes. But leveraging our platform now, we are connecting with more banks, with private sector service providers. The vision here is to make the platform available to startups, to banks, to businesses, to SMEs, to reduce their documentary and border compliance costs, to get more access to finance. So using the single window, it would be easier for the banks to carry out a verification of a woman-led business and extend them loan, because we have all the information available now. So these are the sort of things that we are talking about. We, again, at the end of the day, single window platforms are basically data exchange platforms. They are not substitute for policies. If the policy environment is not right, Zeeshan, whatever amount of digitalization I do, whatever amount of AI I bring in is not going to help if the policy framework is not right. So that would be my last point on that.
Great. Thank you, Aftab. Dr. Zeelaf, my final question is to you. As somebody who is leading, this largest sort of business conglomeration in Pakistan, maybe you can shed some light on, as the chairperson of this body, what is it that the PBC can do to use this new competitive pressure to sort of wake up the R&D engine, the innovation engine, or whichever label you want to give it. But the bottom line being, how do we finally pivot, given it seems like you can see all of these dominoes sort of getting placed, and it just somebody's flicked it, and now we're seeing those effects happen. How do we finally move from the rent-seeking model that we've had for so long towards this R&D, innovation, creativity model?
There was, I think, something mentioned about we need to be developing. I mean, I'm first just making this comment, and then I will get to you. We need to be developing, resources, education, 100%. But there is an element of creativity in Pakistanis and actually in South Asia. So we always find a solution for a problem. We call it jugaad. And there's also a book on it now written, I think it's not by a Pakistani, it's by an Indian. So it's about being able to harness that, providing an environment where it can flourish and is channelized towards the right resources. We are pivoting by basically, as I mentioned before, by not only focusing on what the issues and challenges of the big businesses are, which is what a lot of research that has been published has been related to, towards more in-depth solutions, data analysis, and reports about the new economy, about, as I had mentioned, our whole agriculture series is about how to take agriculture to the next level, huge potential there, about the startup culture, what we could be doing. इनकी electronics की electronics की जो कि duties पे अगर मैं थोड़ी सी और जो cascading की बात है और जो raw materials versus finished goods पे उसके बाद फिर से इस पे आती हूँ इस पे हमने report की थी और up to 90% regulatory duty or tariffs electronics industry पे. So आप कैसे assemble करेंगे mobile phones और आप कैसे अपनी electronics appliance industry को जिसमें there is room for innovation and there is room for technological advancement. So yes, if you look at, we just had our dialogue on economy, which was in Islamabad, where we bring all policymakers together, we bring big business together, we bring the stakeholders. It's a hub that we believe of not just the challenges, but also what the solutions may be. And you will find there is more time given, more sessions about how to encourage competition, how to encourage innovation, how to be pivoting towards the newer economy. So the realization is definitely there where it comes to even big business. As you had mentioned, as I said, I understand the skepticism that is prevalent. What I believe is the challenges are multifactorial. There is a lot of good being done by business of all sizes. We have to believe in business to drive the engine of this economy. There is no question about that. We believe in business. We let the business do business, facilitate them, and remove the barriers, remove the unnecessary taxes, remove passing all the inefficiencies of mismanagement in the energy sector with the losses and the thefts and the subsidizing the residential sectors. That's what we are passing on to our global customers. They're not taking it. So, and consistency in policy, that's where the investment is not coming. Because if the local investor is not going to invest, because there is no consistency in policy, how do you expect the foreign to invest? But coming back to, it has to be encouraged from within the business. We have to be rewarding businesses that are diversifying, that are going into value addition, that are investing in R&D, and we need to be supporting brand building, globally brand building. So it's not just about knowing what the market needs, it's about, rather than wasting money on some fare where unless you have already done your homework to connect business to what is going to be happening, invest some money in how to create the distribution channels, invest some money into how to get the customer and the shelf space for the businesses that want to create brands. Encourage what you do export to build brand, rather than exporting generic rice and that being repackaged with Indian brands. So focus on what is going to encourage investment in innovation, which has to be IP protection. Huge. So yes, business has to rise to the challenge. Let the government set the tone and the environment. Let business rise to the challenge to compete with the mindset to win.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Zeelaf. That's actually very well said. And I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that when PBC did its event in Islamabad, you're absolutely right. You know, we can talk about it in these rooms and have these panel discussions all we want, but the practical side of how do you actually encourage innovation in one of the largest business conglomerates in the country, and then actively push towards that R&D is of course a sight to behold. We have about 12 to 15 minutes. There's some audience Q&A. Anna, if I may request you to join us up on the stage, because some of the questions are actually directed towards you. So please come and join us. Anna from the World Bank, once again, joining us on stage. Just one last lightning round of questions. For the sake of the argument, and by lightning round I mean just use 5 to 10 words. There's a very specific question I'll ask. Say the reforms have held, and it's 5 years down the line. We are sitting in a room like this in 2030. It's December. Everything that we wanted to accomplish, we managed to accomplish. What does the cover of The Economist say about Pakistan? Sorry, Aftab, I'll put you on the spot first.
I'm thinking there's so many things, you know, but 5 to 10 words. So, Pakistan as the trade tech giant. Pakistan as the global trade tech giant. That would be my take.
Great. Naqi?
From assembler to an innovation hub.
Nice. Very nice. Anna?
Pakistan is open for business.
Nice. Very nice. And Dr. Zeelaf?
Pakistan is on its way to becoming the 6th largest economy in the next 50 years.
Inshallah. Sarah, if I could ask you to start posing some of the questions to the panelists.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our panel for a wonderful discussion. I hope you can all hear me. Yes. Great. We have a lot of questions and not a lot of time, so our team has pulled together some of what we feel are the more salient ones, and I'll pose them to the panel. जो रह जाते हैं, we'll do our best to try and put out some form of answers on socials. This is great engagement. I'm loving that the QR codes are working. It's a bit of an experiment for us also. The first question I have here is for Dr. Zeelaf, actually. Dr. Zeelaf, one of our audience members wants to know, does Pakistan have a long-term export strategy, or are we still operating quarter to quarter?
We do not yet have a long-term export strategy. It requires the whole of government approach. It is not just something that the Commerce Department can take care of. It requires whole of government, which includes the finance, which includes the FBR, which includes the energy policy, and it also includes the industrial policy to be, which is supposed to be launched, with the input of businesses and of organizations such as BBC that collect data and do research, to make it oriented towards export-led businesses. Diversified export cannot just rely on textiles and rice. Diversified. Make them grow, no question about it, but make the others grow more so that their percentage in your overall export is less. So there is many other that you are already doing, which is very small. Start focusing on those. And we've already spoken about IT. So I hope that answers the question. We need to get there.
I think that answers it quite comprehensively, and I feel like one of the things that's been emerging from the panel consistently and all of the conversations we've had today is how holistic all of this has to be for any way forward to actually emerge. Anna, the next question is addressed to you. Somebody here says, I recently bought great quality locally manufactured tiles at a good price. My question is there a sense or evidence-based study on how tariff policy affects this and other local industries in particular?
So that's a good question, and I think one of the main issues raised when we talk about the national tariff policy is what would it do for domestic industry. And the thing is, I recognize there are sectors that suffer from dumping, right? Dumping is basically when a country with massive production capabilities, so, let's say country X, decides deliberately, right, that if they have an excess production of tires, that they will then export it to a country like Pakistan, but then below the cost of production. And this is what classifies as dumping. And the thing is, there are mechanisms in place to address scenarios like that. They're called anti-dumping countervailing measures. And every country has the right, in a case of dumping, to impose tariffs that increases the cost of those dumped goods, so then it's price reflective of the production. The thing is, in Pakistan, that mechanism has historically not been strong enough and responsive enough in these cases, right, to support and protect Pakistani organizations and firms. So in our dialogue with government, we're supportive of the tariff reform, but we have stressed the importance of strengthening that anti-dumping countervailing measure mechanism within the government. And that falls under the Ministry of Commerce and the National Tariff Commission. And that really can come about if the capacity at the staff level is strengthened, that there is rigorous monitoring of these cases of anti-dumping, and that action is taken very, very quickly. So And we've consistently said this, right? That it has to be a package of reform and support, and the government is cognizant of this. And actually, I remember that recently there was a Prime Minister directed call for the National Tariff Commission to propose a set of reforms that would strengthen that capacity. So it's something that they are looking at. But I would imagine in the case of the locally produced tires that are price competitive, that would be a concern. But if by definition in the question they are price competitive, then I would imagine that they could withstand the sort of foreign competition of other countries in a non-dumping situation. But just wanted to stress that that is a reality, that products do get dumped. But instead of hijacking the tariff system as a solution, it's better to strengthen the mechanisms that are already in place to address it.
I think we have time for maybe 2, maybe 3 more questions.
Sure. Thank you, Anna. That was very valuable perspective. I think the next question that I have is addressed primarily to Naqi and Dr. Zeelaf, to you. So, and this is, should the government support or take bets on an or any industry, and what are the frontier industries? Where is our next double-digit growth figure coming from?
I know where that question came from. Salman.
I think this is something you have the prerogative. You have to take the ownership. You're in IT.
Well said.
Salman, we were having a discussion on it earlier as well. Electronics, IT, or I would call it ICT, or even the payment systems. These are all the few industries that we can look into it as the next big frontier for us. When it comes, and also they have to be pushed through our own products. We have to start building our own products, or we have to start coming up, even when it comes to services industry or IT industry, or the software industry as we call it. We have to start investing on our products. Till the time we don't do that, as a service provider, you won't be able to get there. We were having a discussion on it. What if we become part of the global value chain for one of the mobile phone industry part, or what if, or the other industries related to it? When it comes to mobile phone, so it's not only mobile phone, it's the entire touch and touch screen industry that you call. They're pretty much a bigger mobile phone, be it your TV, be it your laptop, be it your tablet, be it your anything, you just name it. So whenever we are building something, we want to be a part of one global value chain, we have to look at the entire structure. The problem with Pakistan right now, if I see, the Pakistani industry is not that big enough. And we're not pushing it to start becoming bigger, that we become a part of the global value chain, unless some of the big guys come in and use it, or they're being forced out of certain countries, and they start investing into Pakistan to make it a global powerhouse. For us to start looking at the next frontiers in any sector, I think agriculture can be a huge double-digit growth. Textile can be, till the time we don't have our own products, or we don't have our own brands. We were having this discussion as well. Even if you look at it, I give example of Turkey as well, or Bangladesh or others as well. They've started developing their own brands. From chinos, which we export for around $2 or $3, they might be selling that chinos for $5 or $6. That's still twice the amount of money that we're exporting. In the start, the volumes would be less, but they'll start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So for us, the next frontier is our own brands. We've seen it from our neighbor as well, where in the past 20 years, they've developed the brands, and they have now become global powerhouses. Just being sheerly managing their own internal volumes first, and then expanding globally. So we have to start investing on our own products. That is the key for us.
Well said.
He mentioned, yes. he actually mentioned Turkey. It's a good example. They actually had a strategy. The whole government had a strategy. It was called Turk something. They picked up 10 big, healthy companies who they saw potential in, and they supported them to go global with brands. So just as an outpost. Agree with him on value-added agricultural products, okay? It supports your industry here. If you go into agri-value-added, agri-processing, it provides jobs because that is your largest sector that gives, that provides jobs in the country. That has the highest room, just seed reform. Yields can, from 25, 30% can double. So potential, the world is never going to stop eating. The market is always going to be there. Build brands, so that is one sector that I think. IT we've spoken about. Pharmaceutical, absolutely possible. They should know where they want to segment. They should know where they want to go, because India and China are, way, way, way ahead. But there is room. There is definitely room. So, Africa. We did a report on semiconductors. Of course, it was also about the challenges that came about, but there is room. So, picking up on the industries that are have the potential, have a space in the global market, in the global supply chain, and we have shown ability to have done that, even if it is at a much smaller level. Open up, don't be scared of competition. Compete with big brands, partner with big brands, go wherever it takes you. So a change in mindset from being inward focused to outward focused.
Thank you both. I think we have time for one last question, and this doesn't have a specific panelist indicated, so I'll let whoever take it. The question is, are we still trying to win the price war through tariffs and cheap currency, while the real battle for market access is now being fought over digital traceability and ESG compliance?
I can take that very easily.
Yes, please.
Okay, because it's something that I have. Do you want to take that? No, because are you guys working on the single window? I've been asked too many questions, so maybe they actually wanted you to answer. No? Okay. So yes. So from very much my company perspective and PBC perspective. So we have a Center for Excellence in Responsible Business. We are not only talking about we're building capacity with traceability, sustainability, and AI to be doing that. And as a company, we are actually investing in our suppliers, in the supply chain, so that we can then be also better prepared for exports, which we are doing. We want to expand because that is going to be the requirement for EU. It has already started becoming the requirement. They do dairy, poultry, unless there is traceability, they are not going to be letting you do that. So yes, certainly. So the companies, the organizations that have outward ambitions have started investing in that. To answer your question, Can only tariffs do that, or do we have to take that route? We cannot ignore it. We cannot ignore it at all, because it is it's coming in your face. So that's where the world is going in. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just quickly add, I think my own take on that is that the traceability platforms are going to become the next non-tariff barrier very soon. Because there are not a lot of businesses that can comply with the data requirements. So for example, we have been trying to do a POC, a proof of concept of a national traceability platform for textile sector. And the reason that I'm very, very reluctant to take that project from the single window platform is because we cannot ensure the authenticity of that data that is going to be fed into the system by the suppliers. So at the end of the day, it is the exporter's responsibility to make sure that the entire supply chain is documented. Now we are talking about a country where half of the businesses are not documented. If somebody is giving a CNIC number or a national tax number in the system, I need to make sure that it's verified from the FPR or other databases. But if you don't have an NTN, what do I do about it? Think about a farmer who is not digitally literate. I mean, I'm not even talking about conventional literacy. How would you expect them to be feeding data into the system? Think about milk, what do we call that? A person who sells milk, And so these are like real life challenges. And therefore, I think, we are already late in responding to that challenge that's going to come up, because in the first step, even the laws on the EU side are evolving. They have just specified certain areas with information, for example, origin, carbon footprint, recycling to ensure the circularity of goods, but they have not really identified the data elements. As the system evolves and matures on the EU side, I'm sure they are going to come up with requirements that would be very, very hard to fulfill on our side. And this is the time that the public and private sector really has to join hands on it.
Absolutely. And I think we're already seeing some examples of that. So for example, one of the things we've been discussing are the new European Union regulations, for example, the CBAMs, which is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanisms, that will absolutely make it incredibly difficult for exporters in Pakistan to be able to send to these markets. Thank you very much. As we conclude, I'll leave you just a couple of quick thoughts. We started the afternoon on a number, the $60 billion number that's there in the report. That is money that we're leaving on the table because we are a little too afraid to innovate. But today, in this conversation, we've heard Dr. Zeelaf said that the industry is ready. We have heard Naqi say the innovation is right here. We're doing it in our backyards. We've had Aftab talk about how digital highways and frictionless environments are being built to be able to facilitate all this. And of course, Robina Athar from earlier, who has led the tariff work that would actually ensure that all of this goes through. The World Bank report, the PD report, very specifically tells us that the path to prosperity is not through higher walls. It's actually through smarter firms, it is through faster borders, it is through open minds, and that is what we have to sort of focus on. I'm very grateful to my panelists today, Dr. Zeelaf Munir, an absolute titan of the industry, Anna Toom from the World Bank. What I appreciate you about the most is the fact that even though you've been here for a short period of time, you pronounce Pakistan as Pakistan and not Pakistan, which is very nice. Naqi, my oldest friend in the world, of whom I could not be more proud. Aftab, literally the nicest man I've ever met, and he's doing incredible work with PSW, and of course earlier Dr. Robina Athar, who's led the work on trade. Thank you to all of you for being here. Very grateful for your presence. There's bankers in the room, reporters in the room, people from commerce and trade, universities. I would very highly encourage you to join us for high tea right outside this room and do a little bit of networking, get to know each other. We're going to be shooting some sideline interviews in this room, so I would request you to use that door to go out to the high tea. Once again, my sincere thanks to all of you for being here, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you very much, Zeeshan.